Hello, everyone. Lieutenant Crawford again. We just reviewed the major and minor lights. Next up, we're going to be getting into the actual calculation for determining computed visibility of a specific nav aid. As you now know, preferably a major light. So how do we do it? There's actually three main steps to calculating computed visibility. The first step is to calculate geographic range. The second is to calculate your luminous range. And then finally, deciding based upon those two calculations, which of the two is going to be your computed visibility. For this lecture, we're going to run through where to find the data we need for our calculations and focus specifically on calculating geographic range. As you can see on the slide, though, there are quite a few terms that we will be unpacking as we progress through the lecture, but I wanted to bring to your attention, specifically horizon distance is used when calculating geographic range, and both nominal range and meteorological visibility are used when we're calculating luminous range. Now, in order to calculate both geographic range and luminous range, some pre-work is required. We need to not only select appropriate lights that can be seen, but also once we've chosen the lights, we need to gather information about them. For each of these calculations, you're going to need 4 bits of data. Number 1, the height of eye of the observer. This is usually in relation to a watchstander in the pilot house, meaning the height of eye of the watchstander from the bridge to the waterline. So where can this information be found? While most ships will have this value listed on their pilot card or passed down via word of mouth, if you want to know where this came from, or even to check that it's correct, you can look in your ship's information book, also known as the SIB. This is a very useful publication, and some ships have a hard copy, maybe down in central control, possibly the engineering logroom. But I would be willing to bet that most of them now have the reference electronically found somewhere on the share drive, and this will probably be the easiest place to find it. Within that reference, you can find the height from the waterline to the pilot house, making minor adjustments to the value if the watchstander happens to be extremely tall or extremely short. The next two pieces are information about the light, specifically the height of the light used when calculating geographic range, and also the nominal range of the light used when calculating the luminous range. So where might you find this information? Well, we can find that info within the two references we discussed earlier, light list and list of lights, depending upon your geographical location. You can also find this information on a paper chart located next to the nav aid. Pay attention, however, to the units used on the chart. For our examples, we will be using heights in feet when doing our calculation for geographic range. So you will need that value in feet, otherwise you will have to convert. There will also be a nominal range located near the nav aid. It, however, will show a value with a capital M next to it. That M stands for nautical miles, not statute miles. And then finally, on a digital chart, you can right-click and query the nav aid to find the information listed. The last piece is the expected meteorological visibility. Now, this is a dynamic value, meaning it changes. We all know that weather is a prediction, and depending upon where you're at, can change rapidly. So while we may have calculated computed visibility to a light using meteorological data from earlier in the day, understand it could change if the weather gets better or worse. Just keep that in mind. So where can we find this weather information? Well, fleet weather centers provide this information to all ships based upon where they think you are at. You will be providing that information via your move rep to be discussed in a different lecture. You can also get information from your strike group's METOC or AG's detachment, or if you're lucky enough to have one on board, you can get it directly. Now that you know the 4 pieces of data, I'm going to run through Pub 114 to show you what it looks like and where the data that we need is located. So for this example, I chose Fastnet Rock Light, located off the southern coast of Ireland. It's a primary light, ideal for establishing landfall. I checked the SIB so I know my height of eye from the pilot house. I also have an updated weather report containing expected meteorological visibility for the time I anticipate passing near the light. I now just need information about the light, its height and nominal range. So what am I going to do? I open the publication and I turn to the index to find the page that the light is located if it's in print version. If you have the digital version, which honestly most people use nowadays, you can just use Control F and type in the name of the light. I turn to the page and I see the following. The first thing I notice is that there are 8 columns of data. under each of the column headers will be the respective information pertaining to that light. Column 1 is the light number. This is the number assigned to that light by NGA for the list of lights publication and by the Coast Guard for light lists. For most lights, there's an international cross-reference number listed in the annex of the pub if you wanted to use a local IHO publication for the light. And if there happens to be one, you'll see that value in italics below the light number just above it. Column 2 is the name and location. Big thing to pay attention to here is the style of the font. Bolded lights are primary seacoast lights. Within the list of lights, those are lights with a nominal range of 15 nautical miles or greater. These are great examples to use when deciding on a light for helping to detect landfall early. As you can see, Fastnet Rock here is bolded, so good to go. If you see anything listed in italics, it is a buoy, lightship, or super buoy, not primary lights. Column 3 is the latitude and longitude of the light. Column 4 is the characteristic of the light. This is extremely important to know. You will want your bridge team to know not only when and where they should anticipate seeing a light, but also what to look for. In this case, you should be seeing a flashing white light with a period of 5 seconds. If you were seeing a flashing red light, you may be in the wrong position. You would definitely want to convey this information to the watch team, and a good place to do that is in the CO's night orders. Column 5 is the height of the light. This is the value we need. Write it down. 160 feet. The top unbolded value, as you can see there, is that height in feet. The one that is bolded below it, 49, is actually the height in meters. Just pay attention to that because we were trying to use the height in feet, because when we get to the calculation portion, we'll have a factor that takes into consideration that conversion. So if you plug in meters, the value will come out incorrect. The next column, column 6, is nominal range. We also need to write this down. This is the nominal range in nautical miles. So that 27 is actually 27 nautical miles. Column 7 is very good descriptive information about the light structure itself. For right here, it's saying Fastnet Rock is a gray granite tower that is 177 feet tall. And then in the last column, column 8, is descriptive information about the light as well. In this case, you can see that it has AIS transponder and is also equipped with a fog detector light. So that's pretty neat information to know. Awesome. So now we know how and where to find the data we need to compute visibility of light. Time to compute geographic range. So geographic range is the maximum distance a light can be seen by an observer based upon the height of the light, the height of the observer, and the curvature of the Earth. When computing geographic range, we need to first determine the horizon distance of both the light and the observer. Horizon distance of the light is the maximum, and I say maximum, distance a light can shine based upon its height above the waterline and the curvature of the Earth. Because the Earth is not flat, the Earth will at some point block the view of the light. So to determine this distance, we need to multiply the square root of the height of the light in units of feet by a factor of 1.17. I mentioned this earlier, but it's extremely important to use units of feet here. Again, this is because that factor of 1.17 includes a conversion from feet in order to get an output in nautical miles. Any other value for height aside from feet multiplied by 1.17 will give you an incorrect computed horizon distance. So, in this example, the height of the light is 30 feet. So we need to take the square root of 30 and multiply by 1.17. This yields us 6.4 nautical miles. That's the horizon distance of the light. We can also use table 12 in Bowditch to have this calculated for us. Now we need to do the exact same thing for the observer. Horizon distance of the observer is the maximum distance an observer can see based upon their height of eye and the curvature of the Earth. In this example, the height of the observer is 20 feet. The product of the square root of 20 and 1.17 yields a value of 5.2 nautical miles. This means that if you were standing watching a ship with a height of eye of 20 feet, you could see a little over 5 miles in clear weather. This makes sense. Again, we could also use table 12 in Bowditch. Now, for those of you who hate math, there are alternatives. I highly recommend using the formula, but if you despise math, you can use Table 12, which calculated horizon distances for many different heights. Now, notice how there are two height columns, feet and meters. We are gathering our data in feet, so make sure you use the correct column. We're going to use feet. Now you go down to the height of the observer. In this case, it was 20 feet. And then you're going to read out the horizon distance right next to it under the nautical miles column. This yields 5.2 nautical miles. Again, now we're going to move down to the height of the light, which is 30 feet. And then we're going to read out the horizon distance in nautical miles directly next to it of 6.4 nautical miles. Look at that. Now you have to add both those values together to get the geographic range. This should look familiar. Once more, if you really hate math, you can use Table 13. Table 13 at first glance can look a little bit complicated. First off, there's two scales, feet and meters. We're going to stick with feet. Next, the numbers along the x-axis at the top represent the height of the observer. So if you remember, the height of the observer was 20 feet. So we'll want to move along the x-axis on the feet scale until we get to 20. The y-axis represents the object height. From our example, we used the value of 30 feet. So we will want to move down along the y-axis on the feet scale until we get to 30. Finally, you will follow those values down and over until they intersect. This is the value of geographic range. As you can see, it matches up with the formula that we used earlier and the sum of the two horizon distances from Table 12. One thing to keep in mind, though, with Table 13 is that the heights do not increase by units of 1. As you can see, height of eye of observer starts at 7 feet, then it goes to 10, 13, 16. Same with object height, moving from 0 to 3 to 7, and so on. So if you have a height that falls in between, you're going to have to interpolate to find the value. The other alternative is to use Table 12, which does increase by units of 1, or of course just use the formula. Well, this concludes the geographic range calculation portion of the lecture. Next up, we will be calculating luminous range.